Any declarations of pecuniary interest on the matters? All right, seeing none, I will now officially open the public meetings held under the Municipal Act, the Planning Act, and County Policy. Please be advised that to preserve your right to appeal to the local planning appeals tribunal, you are required to make comments or provide written submissions prior to the passage of a bylaw. It is important to note that no final decisions are being made on these matters today. These meetings are to allow the public to provide initial comments, and further reports will come forward at a future date. First is Staff Report CD 21-102. This is in regards to the official plan to adopt a new secondary plan for Port Dover. And Ron Palmer and Donna Hind with Planning Partnerships are the consultants that are here to present the plan to Council. Welcome, Donna. I don't see Ron on my screen just yet.
Yep, I believe he's here. Yep, there he is.
Okay, perfect. So I will turn the floor over to yourselves.
So thank you, Mayor Chaw. Just to start off, planning staff does just have a bit of an introduction.
Okay, perfect.
And then we will hand it off to the planning partnership. So the purpose of today's public hearing is to receive feedback regarding the county-led official plan amendment to adopt the Port Dover secondary plan and supporting urban design guidelines. Norfolk County has retained the planning partnership, a consulting firm, to complete the plan. The planning partnership is here today, which you noted, to present the elements of the plan. There will be two parts to the presentation. So the planning partnership will go through the plan, and then I'll follow up with more details regarding the public engagement and any comments received. So with that being said, I would like to introduce you to Donna Hind and Ron Palmer, principals of the planning partnership, to discuss the Port Dover secondary plan.
Thanks, Jennifer. I am going to just share my screen. And are you seeing my screen?
I see it.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much. I'll get started and then I am going to hand it over to Ron. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present the secondary plan and the urban design guidelines. I want to start with just a bit of an overview of the engagement and consultation we've had over the past several months on the secondary plan. So we began the exercise with one-on-one conversations with the councillors and mayor. Early on in the exercise, we did this because we really want to hear individual perspectives on what's important. We had conversations with developers who have applications. We've had several rounds of conversation with the public, including 3 public workshops and then another conversation with the Waterfront Preservation Association, and we have along the way worked with a terrific working group with 4 sessions since we began. With that, Ron, I'm going to kick it over to you to talk about the secondary plan.
Thanks, Donna. Just to begin, the reasons for doing this secondary plan were quite numerous, and we started with the need to bring the Port Dover planning policy regime up to date. In addition to that, the current official plan has quite a bit of overlapping policy that needed to be harmonized and brought into one single document so that the cross-referencing overlap is removed. So this is a new plan, and it does work with the existing and relatively new official plan, but it does propose to remove Port Dover from the Lakeshore Special Policy Area secondary plan, and it does intend to replace the policies that are found within 6.5.2 of the current official plan. Notwithstanding the desire to remove duplication, we have in this plan utilized a number of key policy sections from your official plan. Again, no need to duplicate, simply reference back. One of the things that I heard throughout the process was we want more teeth. We want the ability to manage change and particularly design in a more specific way. So part of this plan is to introduce both a design policy framework as well as a new and more comprehensive set of design guidelines that are attached as an appendix. The other intent of a secondary plan is to provide some fairly clear direction on changes.
I sent you an email. He sent me a new link.
To the implementing zoning bylaw. Shall I stop while we make the connection here? The next slide. The secondary plan starts with a vision statement and a set of principles. And these parts of the plan fundamentally come from the engagement process that Donna led with staff at the very beginning of the process. We wanted to hear what people think or would like Port Dover to become in the longer term, and then establish a set of principles that help Port Dover and the county make decisions about how to achieve that vision. The vision and the principles form the basis of the secondary plan. Next slide. We start after the vision and principles. We provide a series of policy statements that are overarching and apply throughout Port Dover, not specific to any particular property or land use designation, but apply across the board. Our goals were to promote a community in Port Dover that is complete, that is viable, that is beautiful, healthy, sustainable, and resilient. Then we provide a series of policies that are a little bit more specific on a host of important topics aimed at making Port Dover and retaining Port Dover as a wonderful, wonderful place to live. Next slide. So we did create Schedule 1, which is a growth management schedule, and it's a fairly conceptual high-level map that identifies a number of districts and talks about where growth will be focused and where growth will not be focused. Important to the growth management section is that the scale of the land areas that are within the boundary of Port Dover has the opportunity to accommodate somewhere between 20 and 20,000 and 25,000 people in the long term. That is a significant change from existing Port Dover, about 3 times its current size. What we're trying to do is promote Port Dover in an urban structure that is logical and that promotes ideas of other types of land uses and other types of housing forms that don't currently exist in Port Dover. Of course, fundamentally important to growth management is how all of this development will be phased over time. So there are very specific policies that link growth and development to infrastructure, to the policies of this plan, including the urban design policies, and puts the power of phasing and including the allocation of servicing capacity in the hands of the county and specifically council. Next slide. When we get into the land use section, which is the largest part of the plan, we talk about the rules of engagement for new development. So this is the land use schedule, and it is based on the growth management schedule, but provides substantially more detail and includes a host of land use designations, some of which are new and some of which are currently within your official plan. Next slide. We start with land uses that are permitted in all designations, so permitted anywhere within the municipality, except within your core natural heritage features. We also talk about land uses that are prohibited anywhere in Port Dover. Then we establish a series of land use specific policies, and these are built forms and land uses that occur in more than one designation. And we put them here in order to avoid duplication throughout the document. Next slide. In the plan, we do create 5 new designations that are specifically new to this plan. And each one of these includes a statement of intent. It identifies a list of permitted uses. It includes development policies, urban design policies, and then the site-specific policy areas. As I said, there's 5 of these designations: the Port Dover Downtown, the Port Dover Urban Waterfront. Next slide. The existing neighborhoods. Next slide. The future neighborhoods and the mixed-use designation. All of these are new designations and include a full policy framework within the new secondary plan. Next slide. There's also a whole host of land use designations that show up on the map, and they make reference back to the current official plan. Again, no need to completely reinvent the wheel here. Your official plan is relatively new, and the policy frameworks provided in that official plan were appropriate to these land use designations going forward. So there's these 5 and these 3 that are carryovers from your current official plan. Next slide. We include in the plan networks and infrastructure plan. This one's identifies the hierarchy of roads found within Port Dover and identifies conceptual locations for new roads. We don't include conceptual locations for the local road network, but we're certainly looking at the arterial and collector road network and how that may be expanded to accommodate new growth. Next slide. We include an active transportation plan. This is bike trails, walking trails, mixed trails, and how they link to the broader Lake Erie Waterfront Trail and the various districts within the community. Next slide. Similar to some of the land use designations, we reviewed the policy frameworks for a whole host of topics within Port Dover, and we made reference back to the official plan where these topics were appropriately dealt with. So again, here we're relying on the policy framework of your county official plan. Next slide. In the final, sorry, you went too far. In the final section of the secondary plan, we talk about implementation and monitoring. Again, Section 9 of the Norfolk County official plan identifies all of the tools that you need to help implement this plan over time. The additional section that we added was talking about how urban design may be implemented in Port Dover. In addition to the urban design guidelines, which are provided in Appendix 1, and I'll talk about in a second, we did identify a couple of other ideas that may help the county adjudicate issues of urban design through various other tools and processes. Again, you asked for teeth in terms of urban design and development approval, and these are processes that give you additional teeth in addition to the policy that is provided in the plan and the guidelines that are provided in the appendix. So in, next slide, please. In the urban design guidelines, we talk about a number of things. We have some general objectives that talk about how used, trying to achieve, what the definition of consistency is. Keeping in mind that this is an appendix, and the test for dealing with policy is conformity. The test for dealing with guidelines is consistency. And those are two slightly different phrases, but have very different meanings in terms of how you deal with policy versus guideline. Next slide. So here are the key topics that we deal with in the urban design guidelines. They follow along with the secondary plan quite closely and deal with really important topics about design as it goes forward either through new development in existing parts as new development in your future development areas. Next slide. Appendix 2 identifies the location of your existing designated heritage properties. We put this in an appendix so that over time, as you add new buildings or properties into your heritage list, you don't have to do an official plan amendment to change this map. Next slide. Appendix 3 is a guideline document about urban forestry. It's a topic that is important in Port Dover. And here we talk about a host of ideas about species, where they should go, how they should be planted, and so on. Next slide. Donna, do you want to finish this up? You're muted, however.
There we go. Just to wrap up, and then I'm going to hand it back over to Jennifer. After today's meeting, we'll be reviewing all the comments that we've received at the public meeting and then prepare the final document and the design guidelines. So with that, Jennifer, back to you.
Thank you, Donna and Ron. So I just wanted to add quickly that the comments received by the time of writing the staff report that's attached to the agenda have been attached as Appendix F, and staff have created a table with all the comments received with our responses in that table. So as Appendix F, you'll find those there. Briefly, the correspondence the comments included correspondence from the Port Dover Waterfront Preservation Association, and they outlined first that they wanted to ensure public access to the waterfront, including Silver Lake, the Lynn River, Black Creek, and Lake Erie should be pursued. Second, that providing a trail connection from the Lynn Valley Trail around Silver Lake down to Lake Erie would be beneficial to Port Dover. It was also noted that they feel there is an opportunity to redesignate a county-owned parcel of land at 212 Nelson Street. It's a former Public Works yard. So they're proposing that the county redesignate the land from urban residential to parks and open space. So this proposal has been presented to the senior leadership team and is currently under review. So through a subsequent staff report, staff will provide a detailed response to this request and offer a recommendation to council. So also staff have been actively working with the Port Dover Lions Club. They are landowners of key recreational properties within Port Dover. They have been contemplating the impacts of changing a land use designation on their property adjacent to Silver Lake. So we will probably be hearing comments regarding that tonight or today. Comments from the Long Point Biosphere Reserve provided suggestions regarding environmental sustainability and climate change. Other comments received included thinking about the pedestrianization of downtown Port Dover, and there were concerns regarding the infill development policies being too restrictive, noted, as well as concerns regarding parking specifically within the downtown area of Port Dover, excuse me. So staff have begun to review these comments and will provide detailed responses as I noted. So since notification for the public hearing for today, staff have received additional comments. So it's my understanding that this package was circulated to the public hearing committee today. So all comments received up until 2 p.m. this afternoon were circulated, and clerks will upload the document to the agenda at a later time. So correspondence was received from the Port Dover Board of Trade, the Port Dover Lions Club, the Waterfront Preservation Association, IBI on behalf of a number of clients within Port Dover, MHBC on behalf of a client, and residents also provided some feedback. So each letter or email will be reviewed by staff and a response will be provided through that subsequent recommendation report to council. So generally the comments received We're in regards to the high density policies of section 5.3.3 of the proposed plan. Parking, beach access, and there were site specific matters that will be reviewed. Lastly, in regards to next step, staff are still accepting comments on the document and are planning on facilitating some additional meetings. One will be with the working group, and there will be a session planned with the development industry to provide an opportunity for them to speak directly to staff regarding the proposed policies. And then lastly, to end, I guess, at the direction of council, staff are open to having another public hearing to discuss the plan further and to discuss any modifications that resulted from the public consultation prior to staff seeking a decision of council. So with that, the planning partnership and staff are available for comments or questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Questions? Councilor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Chop, through you to actually our staff. I don't have so many questions per se, just because we did discuss quite a bit in a meeting. So to be really quick and summarize and transparent for the public, we discussed parking, we discussed, you know, the policies surrounding tree coverage, we discussed height and density, some of the uses and the growth that are mentioned in this report, and comments from staff were that they were very aware of it. They were continuing to collect feedback. So I'm just very interested to just hear from the community members who have registered to speak today, and I would be certainly in favor of having a second public hearing meeting on this, just modifying the changes from this draft to the final draft. So no actual comments. I'll just sit back and listen today, but thank you.
Councillor Columbus, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, two questions. And the first one is on page 6 of the 500-page agenda. There's a statement here. The Planning Act also imposes a 2-year period where no person or public body can apply to amend the secondary plan before the second anniversary of the first day the plan came into effect without a declared resolution from council permitting a specific request. Can we get an example of that? Like, I'm trying to comprehend what that means.
So through you, Mayor Chop, so the Planning Act has actually enabled plans to not be amended for 2 years so that there's an opportunity for the community direction to be implemented. So, but there is an opportunity for us to include a resolution to permit amendments. So I don't have a specific example of another municipality, but if amendments are something that council is open to, we can definitely include a resolution to permit them moving forward. But if that is not included, then we wouldn't be able to process amendments for 2 years.
Right. With the growth in Port Dover, I would like to see some flexibility there. So I think the part about amendments would probably be most fitting in that particular thought there. The other question I had was, it was mentioned about 4 species that they can be restricted. Is that on private properties or is it just public properties?
Species. Ron, do you have an answer to that question? He's muted. Ron, I think you're muted.
There you go.
Sorry about that. Through you, Madam Mayor. The forestry guidelines. Hopefully, the public sector would follow the guidelines fairly closely. The private sector, those pieces of information are there as information, and the goal is that the municipality, the county, work with developers to achieve it. It's not a specific requirement.
But we're not going to be removing species of forest purposely to accommodate the plan. Is that it? Okay, so we won't be cutting down some particular tree that somebody planted that the plan does not accommodate, is what I understand.
No, not at all.
Okay, good, thanks.
Van Passen, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. One comment first. It's section 5.3.9 on page 47 of our agenda. It speaks about emergency services and how we have to consult with the service providers to lay out things like fire halls and ambulances. But we're a single tier municipality, so we do it all ourselves. So I think you probably borrowed that section from a different plan, and I think we can eliminate it. The one question I do have is it's section 6.1.3 on the downtown designation. And it's something I've complained about over the years, that you sort of lay out where the downtown of Port Dover is, but there's really no direction on where it should go in the future, and sort of give the public some fair warning that when we sort of get that downtown core filled, which way do we expand it? Because, you know, I don't like to see it just pushed farther up Main Street. I think we should expand it out probably towards St. Andrew and St. Patrick Street on that side. But, you know, is there some wording that you can put in there that, you know, in future our plans would be to expand the downtown core in, you know, X direction or Y direction or whatever?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll take a shot at this one. We did expand the downtown slightly to the west. However, there did not seem to be huge demand at the moment to expand the downtown. However, given the amount of growth that is projected in the long term here in Port Dover, you could anticipate that expansion of the downtown in all three directions could occur. However, we don't know which direction will be most appropriate, and it is embedded in a relatively stable residential area. So while we facilitated a modest change to the boundary, future changes to the boundary should be done as updates to this plan through a full process, so that everyone has a chance to talk about how it might affect their property.
Well, I think that would be my sort of point, that, you know, there's really three options. You can decide on St. George Street, you can just go farther up Main Street, or you can go to the east on St. Patrick Street. But, you know, I would like something in there to say, you know, our intention would be, I don't want one great big long strip all the way up Main Street that is stores on both sides of the street. You'd rather have a big square. Do you want to go from St. George towards the lakeside, or do you want to go the other way towards the riverside? And maybe some wording of, you know, it's going to take a while to get there, but I thought that's what planning was about, not what's there today. Where are we going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And let's really have that vision of where we want to be in 20 years and sort of lay out, this is our intention. It's not going to be part of it. We're not going to change the designation now, but at some point, our thoughts would be to head in that direction.
I have to say, Ron, I have to concur with Councillor Van Passen. I'm sort of a little disappointed in this myself, that I thought this was about setting more of a long-term vision, and I'm not really feeling that out of the report.
Well, that's unfortunate. However, we're not done yet. We're happy to consider this again. In other municipalities, I have added what we call a downtown transition designation, which does some of what you're anticipating. But this does go on people's property, and it does change the context through which they view their property. So I'm happy to have a conversation with staff about doing something like that. And again, if we're, that's a fairly significant change. We don't know exactly in terms of bricks and mortar future forms. We don't know what is going to happen with the larger format retail up in Simcoe. So again, happy to have a conversation about that with staff, and we'll report back to you with what has been done to deal with your comments and concerns.
If I may just help supplement that through the chair, that is a topic that we heard throughout the public engagement and from some of the landowners that are adjacent to the existing downtown. As part of the engagement the planning partnership undertook, there was some debate about that and where the best approach to go in the future. And so what we should think about too is the mechanics of it. What is the purpose of being or expanding a downtown? Or are we really looking for more flexibility in uses or other things that could happen in the future and what the density might be? And that's something that we can look at in the areas that are in and around the downtown. And I think the planning partnership was getting into as to the urban waterfront, and there was a lot of discussion on those adjacent streets as to whether it's appropriate or not, because it does signify change. So I think that's a good topic that's been raised that needs further discussion.
Further questions from council? Okay, then we have a number of registered speakers. We can always ask some questions after the fact as well. So I would remind each of the speakers that are online of our 5-minute time limit. And Marian Gadsby will be going twice. First, she will be speaking as a resident, and then she will have a second presentation as a representative of the Port Dover Waterfront Preservation Association. So first, I will turn it over to Ms. Gadsby. Welcome, Marian.
Good afternoon. My name is Marian Gadsby, and I am speaking to you today as a director of the Port Dover Waterfront Preservation Association. The PDWPA is a not-for-profit corporation with a current paid membership of over 80 people. The association has participated in all of the previous public meetings concerning the Port Dover secondary plan and has discussed issues related to the waterfront with both the consultants and the planning staff. One of the main mandates of the association is to advocate for the public's visual and physical waterfront. We are pleased to see that this secondary plan recognizes the importance of this public access. The association supports the concept of the green land systems as described on page 18 and shown on Schedule A. Schedule A shows that the green land system includes all of the Lake Erie shoreline in Port Dover, the Lynn River shoreline from the pier to Ivy's Dam, including Silver Lake, and the Black Creek shoreline northeast from Coleman's Point to Concession 2. We agree that development should be prohibited in these sensitive areas. We appreciate the inclusion of the Lion Silver Lake Trail and the proposed Water Edge Trail as described in Principle 9 in the Active Transportation section and shown in Schedule D. While we agree with the overall concept of this secondary plan as it relates to the waterfront, there are some areas where we feel that the wording should be stronger or clearer. In Principle 3 on page 4, the word waterfront is not defined to show that it includes all waterfronts in Port Dover. The wording should make it clear that the waterfront includes the banks of the Lynn River and Black Creek and the Lake Erie shoreline all the way to the town limits. In order to provide public visual access to the waterfront, the height of the building is very important. However, setbacks in the angular plane are also important. Most of the text and examples in the draft plan seem to assume that the most important view of a building is from a road. When you are considering massing and setbacks, the view from the water or other vantage points could be more important than the view from the road. On page 13, there are no specific goals for the preserving and enhancing of the waterfront, similar to those found in the affordable housing and forest resource enhancement sections. Throughout the document, using the word shall rather than will would strengthen the mandatory nature of all the plan's provisions in case there are legal challenges. The association would ask that the following be considered. Keeping the Port Dover Harbor Marina as a public marina is only mentioned in general terms. Recently, someone made an offer to buy the marina. Creating a marina special policy area would add another layer of protection to ensure that the marina remains as a public-owned and operated marina, accessible to the public, and a revenue generator for Norfolk County. Public access to the beach, other than at Walker Street, is important. Recently, Norfolk County considered closing the Gray Street and Regent Street beach access points. A few years ago, Norfolk County considered closing the water treatment plant beach access point. By making the entire Lake Erie shoreline from east to west within the town limits a beach access special policy area, an added layer of protection would be provided. In the special policy area, the existing beach access points would be preserved and maintained, and new access points could be created if possible. In the Greenland system on page 18, adding the public's visual and physical access to the waterfront would provide an additional reason for prohibiting development in these areas. Since many of these changes and suggestions involve how a concept or idea is written, we feel that it would be wise to have the county solicitor review and comment on the draft plan. The county solicitor will be relying on the plan's words and concepts to help protect the public's interest whenever a proposed amendment comes before the Ontario Land Tribunal. In closing, the association would like to express its support for the deputations being made today by the Silver Lake Revitalization Project Group and the Port Dover Lions Club. We would also like to express our appreciation to Norfolk County's planning staff, especially Senior Planner Jennifer Caterino, for her time and effort. Thank you.
Thanks, Marian. You're going again?
No, I would like a short break. If you could get Jim or Sue Finney to do it and then come back to me, it would be helpful.
That sounds good. Not a problem at all. All right, so the next speaker then I have, Sue, are you ready to go as a representative of the Port Dover Lions Club?
I'm here and ready to go.
Perfect, welcome.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Sue Finney and I am the president of the Port Dover Lions Club. Thank you for giving me a few minutes to speak with you. In 1995, the Port Dover Lions Club purchased property along the west bank of Silver Lake. At that time, this property was an industrial brownfield site with many old greenhouses. With the help of the community, the greenhouses were removed and the site was remediated. Since then, grass has been growing, more than 1,000 trees have been planted, a soccer field created, and a trail along the banks of Silver Lake was established. In the latest version of the new Port Dover secondary plan, this trail is now included in the section on active transportation and is shown on Schedule D. One of the original buildings now is a very popular farmers market every Saturday, including a kitchen and meeting rooms. There is also a pavilion used for concerts, movie nights, meetings, and recreational activities. A memorial fountain is located at the end of the Lynn Valley Trail. Both the upper and lower parking lots are very, very well used. Recently, a floating dock was donated by the rowing club Legacy Group, and it has been installed at the end of Bridge Alley. The Lions Silver Lake Park is one of the largest parks in Norfolk County, and it is estimated that more than 100,000 people use this park every single year. At the present time, the property is designated as residential. The parcel of land with the farmers market is zoned neighborhood commercial, and the rest of the property is zoned development. The Lions Club would like to keep the park as a park. Therefore, as part of the new Port Dover secondary plan, the Port Dover Lions Club has two requests relating to the designation and zoning of their Silver Lake property. Last week, the Port Dover Lions Club sent a formal letter to Norfolk County outlining these requests. Included with the letter were maps showing the various parcels of land involved. The first request is that Norfolk County make no changes to the following two parcels of land. First, the land now zoned as CN, containing the Silver Lake Market Building. This parcel will remain as neighborhood commercial. And secondly, the lot at the end of Silver Crescent, now zoned as D. This parcel will stay as development. The second request is that Norfolk County change the designation to the owned by the Port Dover Lions Club, located 320 Patrick Street. We request a change from urban residential to parks and open space, with the following uses being permitted: trails, access roads, and existing structures, passive and active open space and uses, public and or private commercial recreational facilities, small-scale commercial uses, limited residential uses such as senior housing complexes and residential care facilities, environmental, educational, interpretive centers or museums, and finally, activities approved by the Port Dover Lions Club, such as, but not limited to, concerts, fireworks, movies, movie nights, car shows, and camping, etc. In closing, the Port Dover Lions Club would like to thank Norfolk County Senior Planner Jennifer Caterino for meeting with us to explain our options and answer our questions. This was really very much appreciated. We would also like to express our support for the deputations being made today by the Silver Lake Revitalization Group and the Port Dover Waterfront Preservation Association. And finally, thank you for your time and consideration.
Thanks very much, Sue, for joining us. If I could have Jim Dover, are you on the line? And Jim will be speaking as a representative of the Silver Lake Revitalization Project. You can go ahead, sir. You'll have 5 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. I'm speaking to you as a project manager for the Silver Lake Revitalization Project. I'm a member of the project steering committee that consists of representatives of the Port Dover Waterfront Association, Port Dover Lions Club, the Long Point Biosphere Reserve, Port Dover Board of Trade, Port Dover Yacht Club, and Port Dover Harbor Authority, as well as Amy Martin, Councillor Ward 6. Our project's goal is to revitalize and secure Silver Lake and its wetland for the community. The word secure means protecting and enhancing the public's physical and visual access to Silver Lake. We decided it was imperative to add this goal given recent residential development on Silver Lake and in the immediate vicinity. Our project will be completed in phases. It will take many years and require a significant amount of effort to complete. Our volunteers have already started working on the project. Funds have been raised to contract professional services required to complete phase 1. A floating dock has been installed on Silver Lake, and the work to remove Phragmites from Silver Lake has begun. Silver Lake and its wetland is now on the path of recovery for everyone's enjoyment. However, we risk expending significant time and effort in the revitalization of Silver Lake only to have water properties sold and the public's physical and visual access to Silver Lake gradually reduced by residential development. One needs to look no further than Meisner Landing and the former Gamble Shipyard to understand our concern. We believe the Port Dover secondary plan can help address our concerns. The plan can protect existing waterfront access. It can also identify opportunities and provide direction to improve access to Silver Lake waterfront by working with landowners, including Norfolk County. For these reasons, we support the concept of the Greenland system, where development will be prohibited. We are pleased that Silver Lake is part of the Greenland system. That being said, we believe the Greenland system needs to be clearly defined in words and a specific width, maybe example, perhaps 20 yards, to be included in that definition. We also support the Port Dover Lions Club proposal to designate Silver Lake Park as parks and open space. It provides an additional layer of protection against residential development. We are pleased that the accompanying staff report states our written request that the former Public Works Yard property located on the Silver Lake shoreline at the east end of Nelson Street in Port Dover be redesignated from urban residential to open space is being considered. This location has significant potential to serve as a vista park with a view over Silver Lake that also warrants protection against residential development. We ask for your support when this issue comes before you at a later stage. We also recommend that all county-owned property in that area of the former public works yard be identified as a separate policy area, and that it be noted that this area is in transition from industrial to open space and recreational uses, permits passive and active open space and recreational uses only, has the potential to link the Lynn Valley Trail and trails along the Silver Lake waterfront to the Port Dover Pier and downtown area, and has the potential to become a heritage site if the former train station located on the site is restored. We also recommend that vista parks throughout Port Dover be identified on Schedule A. Community structure. Vista parks providing views over Silver Lake can be located on the former public works yard property and on land owned by Norfolk County at Meisner Dam. Finally, we do not understand why properties along the Silver Lake waterfront south of Bridge Alley and east on Chapman Street to the bridge at Meisner Dam are included in the Port Dover Urban Waterfront District rather than the existing neighborhood designation. We've not had time to understand the implications of this and intend to explore this issue further with staff. In closing, I'd like to express our support for the deputations made by the Port Dover Waterfront Association and the Lions Club as they relate to Silver Lake. And like the other groups, I'd like to express our appreciation to Norfolk County planning staff, and in particular Jennifer Caterino. It's sort of a bit of a, all of us are saying this, but she truly has promptly responded to our questions and concerns throughout this process. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Councilor Martin, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Chop. Through you to Jim, I just wondered, I apologize, if you could repeat your area of concern that you said you hadn't had time to fully identify or talk with staff. I don't understand.
Yeah, it's the, what I would describe as the southern shore of Silver Lake. It's, and that's between Meisner Dam along Chapman Street and hooking around up to towards Bridge Alley. That's included in the urban waterfront district. And we would have thought that that would have been in the existing neighborhood. But again, I just don't know what the implications of that, but just geographically, it looks as though it's more part of the existing neighborhood. So we just haven't had time to talk that through with staff, and we'd just like to have the opportunity to understand.
Okay, thanks. I've made a note about it, and I'm sure staff did as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Carmen Jandu.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can hear you perfectly. Thank you. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of council and staff. Thank you for this opportunity to address you all regarding the proposed update to the Port Dover secondary plan. My name is Carmen Jandu, as we said. I'm a planner with IBI Group, and I represent FW Nectel, who are the landowners for various properties along Walker Street and St. George Street within the urban waterfront district within the secondary plan. We've been corresponding with staff and especially with Jennifer Caterino as well since the beginning of the public engagement process and have provided our comments on the first draft of the secondary plan back in the beginning of September. We are encouraged and supportive of the direction of the secondary plan and its promotion of the waterfront area as a very important tourist destination for the community and for the county. However, we do want to reiterate some concerns that we had outlined in our September letter that the existing flood considerations and the existing beach hazards for the area along the Lake Erie shorefront are not being discussed in a manner that provides viable options for shoreline protection that would be shared on a more community scale as opposed to on the shoulders of the independent landowners. And in this case, as the county staff knows, our clients, the Nectals, do own a vast majority of that area. And we're willing to work with the county for like future public beach in this area, but we would like to know what kind of careful consideration or attention is going to be discussed with respect to shoreline protection, so it doesn't all fall onto their shoulders. We believe that this is a larger problem that requires careful attention, and we would request further dialogue with the county and the Conservation Authority prior to the approval of the secondary plan to make sure that the beautiful urban design form that's proposed plan and the urban design guidelines can actually come to fruition. We're hoping to meet with staff in the coming weeks, and we're presently completing our review of the revised September 2021 secondary plan with the objective of having further written correspondence sent to the county prior to the October 20th deadline. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but this is really the overarching concern that we have. I thank you again for the opportunity to speak and very much look forward to further consultation with your staff.
Thanks for joining us, Carmen. Marian, I'm going to come back to you again if you're ready for your second presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. I am speaking to you now as a private citizen. I have been a full-time resident of Port Dover since 2002 and a summer resident since 1952. My family rented from the Blakes on Water Street from 1954 to 63 and has owned property in Elm Park near Regent Street since 1963. I have used both the Regent Street and Gray Street beach access point countless times over the years. In the ideal world, there would be unlimited parking at Walker Street, and the beach would be wide enough for everyone to find somewhere to put their blanket close to their car. Realistically, the beach is relatively narrow and people spread out along the length of the beach. On a busy day, they're using the beach all the way to Regent Street and even to Inkerman Street. Cars are forced from Walker Street since there is limited parking. Presently, there are 4 beach access points west of Walker Street. 3 are at the ends of Gray Street, Regent Street, and Inkerman Street. It is unlikely that any of them could be made ODA compliant since they all have break walls. A sign could be placed at each location directing people needing wheelchair access to Walker Street. While Gray Street and Regent Street are close together, they are used by different groups of people. Regent Street is parallel to Main Street and 3 blocks west. It is used by people living in the west end of town or parking their cars in this area. Gray Street is perpendicular to Main Street and is the extension of Market Street. It is used by people living in the east end and central part of town or parking their cars in this area. Inkerman has its own unique features. It is often used by people in the area wanting a very quiet beach. These 3 access points are also different when it comes to high water. When the water is high, the first access point to lose its beach is Regent Street and then Gray Street. Inkerman is the last to lose its beach. The other problem with Regent Street access is the storm drain located between the stairs and the lighthouse. Even if there is a beach, sometimes you cannot get to the beach from the stairs without walking through the stream coming from the storm drain. If you wear shoes because you're not going to be beach but out for a walk, this can be a problem. The Gray Street access is better than the Regent Street when there is high water or there is a large amount of water coming from the storm drain. Beach access is at the water treatment plant. It is used by people living in the area and the kite surfers. Having the kite surfers use this beach keeps them well clear of other boaters, swimmers, and the pier. Public access to the beach other than Walker Street is important, and as I said before, recently Norfolk County considered closing the Gray Street and Regent Street beach access points. A few years ago, Norfolk County considered closing the water treatment beach access. I would request that the entire Lake Erie shoreline from east to west between the town boundaries be listed as a beach access special policy area. In this special policy area, the existing beach access points would be preserved and maintained, and new access points could be created. making the entire shoreline a special policy area, provide an added layer of protection for the public to access the beach. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Marian, for joining us. I'm going to just put it out there. Is there anyone else on the line that wishes to make a deputation to council? Again, is there anyone else that would like to address the committee regarding this application? All right, in that case, are there any further questions from council, or will we move on to the next stage? Councilor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Through you to either or Donna, comment on, I'll go through some of them very quickly here. Marian, in her first deputation, spoke about using language like shall. I know that the secondary plan is more, it's less policy, more guidelines to work with, but comments do you have about something like that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's a really good question. Every policy that's in this document, and set aside the issues of the guidelines, which are appendices, there is a decision to be made about the strength of the wording. Some of the strength of the wording is determined by legislative ability to use definitive wording, like will, shall. Some of it is a choice, and sometimes the words may or encourage are used. Sometimes the actions require or are making statements that compel the municipality to do something. In those cases, we tend not to be as definitive, to give you the flexibility to determine your own destiny. I'm happy to work with staff to go through the use of, let's say, will, shall statements or may encourage statements, and identify if there is an option to use stronger wording, where there is not, and where it's a choice. But it's a very important part of crafting a secondary plan. And as I said at the outset, some of it is sometimes you do not have the legislative authority to compel, to require. And that's why softer wording is used. And I can give you the example of the green building criteria. You don't yet have the legislative authority to compel that. So the wording is softer. Affordable housing, the same thing. So I carefully went through it all. Doesn't mean I have it exactly correct just yet, but I'm happy to go through it and talk about options and where it might be improved.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Having no experience with the secondary plan and in particular the language that could be tightened up or loosened up for the benefit of the municipality, I would be very interested in learning a bit more about that. Another comment from Marian was about creating a beach access special policy. Any comments on that?
For you again, Madam Mayor. It is an idea. The Greenland system does identify most of all of the water's edge of the Lake Erie shoreline, and most of the Silver Lake and the river valleys as protected from development. However, we also have to be very cognizant of ownership. And ownership is a key issue here in Port Dover that we've grappled with for, I can't remember when we did the last work here, 25 years. Mm-hmm. The municipality should not be promoting public access to private land. However, where you have public land assets, you shouldn't be closing them necessarily for access to the water's edge, where that water's edge is public. Now, dealing with the private landowner issues, there's things you can do, and we did try to identify a host of tools where you might achieve securement for public access with private landowners. But certainly it would not be an appropriate thing to do to promote public use of private land without permission.
Okay, thanks, Ron. The last comment.
Sorry, Councilor Martin, can I just ask a question just on that myself? Just in terms of Marian's comments about the water treatment plant, I guess I can understand where she's coming from. At the same time, you know, I also think we're probably the only municipality that has people crawling around their water treatment facility in the way that we do. So I'm not sure that that is necessarily, as we move on into the future, and if, depending on, you know, the outcome of the interurban water supply, you know, if the Port Dover water plant is retained there, I think eventually that access will be gone, because that's just a reality of, you know, heightened security risks around water plants. However, is there something in terms of, if the municipality, you know, to provide some comfort to them, if the municipality, once we are hooked into Nanticoke, and if that water treatment plant was dismantled, what would ultimately become of that municipal property?
Back through you, Madam Mayor. That's an excellent question. That's something that the municipality should be considering at some point. It will, if it becomes a redundant piece of property, it's a huge asset to the municipality, but until you know for certain, it's a functioning water treatment plant, and it needs to, as you've mentioned, it needs to be protected. You know, you may have issues of liability and a whole host of issues with people crawling all over your water treatment plant. But in the future, become a huge public asset that will need its own review as to what the municipality would like to do with it, including the access to the water.
Thanks, Councilor Martin. Sorry about that. I just want to follow along.
Through you, Mayor Chop, to Donna, staff. Marian's last comment on behalf of the Port Dover Waterfront Preservation Association was to have the county solicitor look at the plan. You're obviously very well aware of legislated policies, but is that common practice? Is that, do you have any comments you can share about that?
I'll start with that one through you, Madam Mayor. Absolutely. It's a good idea. I, through my practice, have dealt with municipal lawyers on many files, and it's a good opportunity for them to be involved so that they are aware of the whole background of why decisions were made, why the policies are included. And remember, I had been asked in this plan to give the county teeth to these policies. Your county solicitor will be the dentist.
Great, understood. My last question is on Carmen's comments regarding consideration given to floodplains or flooding in general. Any comments you want to make on that? I know our staff plan to respond, but
yeah, again, through you, Madam Mayor. It's a good point that is made. Obviously, there is works, if the urban waterfront is to transform in a more urban way, the issue of flooding will need to be dealt with. And I believe that comment was saying, county, we want to work with you to solve the flooding issue. Don't put the onus just on us, which is fine, but the county will need to be aware of the wipeout and windfall of dealing with the floodline. Floodline and flood mitigation techniques will enhance the development potential of the property, which is totally fine. The issue of who pays how much, what it is, is really a subject for an ongoing conversation once you have more detail about what the development proposal might be. Because different flood mitigation techniques will be appropriate for different types of development.
Okay, no further questions right now. Thank you.
Councillor Van Passen, go ahead.
I think I found the right button, Madam Mayor. I do have one overriding question on a lot of this whole plan. You know, it talks about the need for parking. We got to improve the parking in Port Dover. It talks about the need for waterfront access. You know, the newest issue is the need for protectional lines. Where's the money come from? Anybody sort of, that not the planning department's job, that's somebody else's job, but how do we, you know, get the money to do all of these things?
Well, I'll take this start at the beginning through you, Madam Mayor. The municipality has a number of tools to generate revenue to do things. Most of that comes from funds that are generated through the development process. The only other way is taxation, which puts the onus on existing residents versus new residents through development. So you have opportunities through Section 42 of the Planning Act for parkland dedication or to get parks or to generate revenue to acquire or improve parks. So that's one element that we talked about in terms of additional green space. You have a new tool under Section 37 of the Planning Act, which is the Community Benefits Charge. And that is a fund that is established to generate funds for the municipality to use for the provision of community benefits. That's brand new under Bill 108, and it replaces old Section 37, which was a different regime about height and density. Now, the community benefit charge is limited to certain built forms, so it's not across the board in terms of development, but it's certainly something that municipalities should be aware of as a tool to generate funds. The third element, of course, is development charges under the Development Charges Act, and that is the intent of development charges is that new development pays for itself. Now, in Porto, that's a big deal, primarily because of your water issues and the need to solve that problem to facilitate new development. So those three tools are pretty important revenue generators, or could be, depending on how you utilize them. And they're all linked to new development. In terms of enhancements to the rest of the community, the existing community, that's a decision that's made through the capital budgeting process and the identification of projects that are for the community benefit in existing portfolio. So it's not a complicated question about finance, but that's what I can tell you from my experience.
Is there any option? I know there's other municipalities that do like an area rating within their municipality, that certain areas that gain the benefit got to pay a little bit more of the tax. And the other thing would be the cash in lieu of parking for the downtown cores where they, it's not parking not available. We have the cash in lieu option. Is that what we charge the right amount? Noting the price of real estate, if you wanted to go buy a lot somewhere in the downtown area of Port Dover, it's not going to come cheap. And are those rates, have they been reviewed as reasonable in today's market?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I forgot cash in lieu of parking, but that is another tool. But that's as far as I can go on that answer. I'm going to have to defer to somebody else on that.
It's been in place for like a lot of years, and I think the only property they ever got is that one behind the Norfolk. They bought an old house there at one time, and maybe it's up to council to decide that we actually have to do something about it. We just can't keep collecting the money and then pass up all the opportunities through the years of finding a place where you could put some parking. So I think that's part of the study that's coming up at some point next year, right? So, but I just wonder whether the amount is right in relationship to the prices of real estate that have gone up in the last 5 years.
Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Chop, building on Councillor Van Passen's question, I can specifically think of one development file that came forward under this council, and the property was on St. George Street. Had the property been on the other side of the road, it still would have been included in the, I believe it was in the central business district, and that changed their requirement for parking. Is there a way that, regardless of our position we take on expanding downtown, whether it's over to St. George Street, over to St. Andrew Street, or neither, that as we see these mixed uses start to be wrapped in on the outskirts of our downtown, that we could have a parking policy in regardless of the zoning, so that cash in lieu would always be collected or always require, you know, one additional parking spot? Is there a way to do something that's site specific on the two outlying streets?
Maybe if I can jump in to assist through the chair. I just want to make sure, so the cash in lieu of parking policy is a little bit of a separate scope of work to this, but essentially what we're doing here with the secondary plan is you can set the high level policy, the direction. So if this is the type of thing, this is the type of topic that we want to go down that's important, we can set that through this policy. Really, this is more of a land use document, so it may not get at every single one of the practical elements. But so essentially, as Ron was saying, it's an important tool, but it's not the only tool or the financial strategy to set to achieve some of these items. So that could be, we could have the policy that parking is important, look at the adjacent areas around downtown, or broaden it, or do a review of the cash in lieu parking policy. And then that could be a subsequent component that would happen, is to look at that. I think that goes hand in hand with what Councillor Van Passen and others had mentioned about that area on the sides of downtown, and whether we looked at mixed use and how the whole parking framework comes into play. So I just want to make sure, like, the secondary plan isn't going to be the tool that's going to solve everything, but it's important that the high level direction, is this direction we want to go to the future? If there are topics like that that we want to look at, those could either be supplemental recommendations or they could be within the policy. But my understanding is there is going to be some separate parking study as well that's going to be coming to council.
Okay, yeah, whether it's appropriate to talk about it at that, when that study does come forward, I think that would be a good catch-all regardless of what we do with the downtown expansion, whatever decision comes of that. If we just on a go-forward basis address parking on those outlying streets as they go forward, because we know that we're in this position with parking. It's been the topic of discussion on every single meeting with the working group. So thanks, Brandon.
Councilor Martin, Brandon, like, to that point, you know, we've even talked about the same thing for Waterfront. Like, I think that the bylaws need to be strengthened, that if you're putting residential stuff in those central business districts, whether it's Waterfront or Simcoe or Port Dover, that it's different. I mean, I understand if you're providing an apartment over an existing store, but if you're actually building some sort of new, you know, commercial type residential, then you would be subject to a parking bylaw, which was one of the challenges we saw with the one building in Waterford opposite the park, the old antique market.
And I think for us, we have our central business district stops on one side of the road on St. Andrew and St. George. So either it's on, you know, site specific with the property, or it's on the other side of the road. I'm not sure if we just encompass both sides, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree that should almost come through this portion.
So just quickly on that topic, through the chair. So I know that through our clerk, and we have an internal group that's dealing with all sorts of parking matters, and had some initial reports, and I believe there's some additional reports that are coming soon about the parking situation. When we get into the planning documents, they can be more specific about on-site parking. And that's where it translates down into the zoning bylaw regulations. And as the mayor had indicated, when you have a new development, if it's mixed use or residential, commercial, here's how many parking spaces they must provide. And currently we have a pretty open system for our central business districts. So that is a topic that could be looked at, or some direction from a secondary plan through into the zoning. The on-street situation, or even other parking lot opportunities or options, that would be a little bit more through other municipal bylaws, although the secondary plan could provide some direction to look into that, to do that, but I think that's already underway.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Van Passen?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And that is why I sort of brought it up. And I think Mr. Sloan explained it well, that you can't look at all these little things in isolation. You know, every once in a while you got to step back and look at the bigger picture to say, if you change A to B in one plan, it also changes B to C somewhere else, and C to D. And we got to make sure it all fits together, that we don't get ourselves backed into a corner somewhere down the road. And I like Councillor Martin's idea that let's expand that little bit and get the cash, and then get the commitment at a long-term capital budget thing, that this county will actually do something and go buy a piece of property somewhere that's not going to be cheap, but we'll have to have the money coming from somewhere. But we just can't keep putting it off and putting it off. You know, it's should have bought it 25 years ago, right? Yeah, it sounds like staff are considering the cause and effect thing that will happen if we change the secondary plan. So I'm happy to see that. So thank you.
All right, I don't see any further hands up. So thanks, Donna and Ron, for joining us today. Thanks, Jennifer, for all your work on this file as well. And if I could then, Councillor Taylor, go ahead.
Oh, it's a question for when the consultants have left.
Is it for staff right now on the? Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
it's about the Simcoe. Just wondering, through you, Madam Mayor, to Brandon, just wondering if you could update us on when we're going to get back into the downtown Simcoe secondary plan. I know I had a brief conversation with you.
All right, I'm going to try to, I think our clerk is pretty, yeah, Donna, go ahead.
Just waving goodbye, I believe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. I think our new clerk is pretty focused on keeping us on the agenda. So unfortunately, maybe we can just get an email from Brandon and an update sent. Unfortunately, the topic is on the Port Dover secondary plan. Is that good, Brandon? With Councillor Taylor, perfect. So if I can have somebody move the staff recommendation or propose an alternative. Councillor Martin, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Rabbits. All those in favor?
I'd like to just add in a couple alternatives there, Mayor Chop. I will move the staff recommendation, but I'd also like to see a second planning meeting of our staff passed with the revisions. I believe that was what Jennifer said. Correct me if I'm wrong, staff.
I think that is the plan, is it not?
I also would like to add in the review of Paula. For Paula to review the plan. I don't know if that needs to come now or when we approve something later. And then some specific discussion surrounding what we just mentioned with parking, whether or not that should be included.
The parking stuff, I'll let Brandon jump in here, but that would be able to address, I mean, council still, when we get the next draft come back, if there's still concerns and stuff that you want changed, I mean, it can also be modified at that time, but Brandon, I'll let you jump in.
Yep, and thanks through the chair, and I'll try and be quick. So all of the, this is the formal part of the process. So all of the oral and written comments that we have, including what was just discussed today, are going to be reviewed and a response prepared by staff and included in the next report. And so the parking item we can identify, and here's the strategy and recommendations or changes that have been made, or the next steps on that. On the county solicitor, she definitely has been aware of this project and involved and told as part of the review from Tricia and Jennifer. So I don't know if we need a council resolution for that, as that's already underway. As the mayor indicated, there's a high probability of another statutory public meeting about the actual, like the full official plan amendment with an updated plan, but that could be something that would I would defer to the public hearing committee and the council that there may be some benefit to putting that in as a resolution. So then it's clear direction, because there is an obligation of council to show how you're including the public feedback into your decision. So that would be a friendly amendment that staff would be fine with.
Okay, that's fine. I put those amendments forward after a specific discussion with Tricia and Jennifer, who said be sure to articulate areas of concern in the resolution. So if you're saying we don't need them and they heard, that's fine with me.
Okay, so we'll add with the addition. Okay, Teresa, go ahead.
Through the mayor, I will make a note of those 2 additional items for the referred matters list for Councillor Martin. But just clarification, as you were going to ask on the wording for the additional meeting, please.
Just an additional public meeting once the next revision has come forward.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so Councillor Martin moved that, seconded by, I can't remember, Councillor Rabbits. Thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. All right, the next item is ZNPL 2021-205, rezoning 453997 Ontario Limited and Agent Civic Planning Solutions on 1026 12th Concession Road. And I believe, Mohammed, this is your report. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and the Council. So this is a zoning bylaw amendment for 2 lots, and it is located in Langton Hamlet area. The subject land is predominantly surrounded by agricultural lands on south and east side, and there are residential developments at the east and north side. The official plan designation is Hamlet. Residential development low density is permitted in Hamlet designated area. The current zoning is agricultural. So the development proposal is creation of 2 lots through severances, but it will require a zoning bylaw amendment from agricultural to Hamlet residential zone. There will be a special provision for reduced lot size from 30 meters to 28.33 meters. We have received a few technical reports in support of this application, a functional servicing report and a plan justification report. We received the agency comments, mostly all are in favor of this development proposal. Not ready to be required for the severance application. And there is a drainage facility, municipal drain at the front of the 2 lots. Section 65 apportionment is required. That is basically a paperwork exercise to allow these 2 lots to use this drainage facility. No public input has been received, and the next step would be to go through the committee of adjustment meeting for the severance application, and then we'll come forward for the recommendation report. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Mohammed. Questions from the committee? Councillor Van Patten, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, a comment on page 1 of the report. The site characteristic, it describes it as the northeast corner of the Langton Hamlet. I'd call that the southeast corner of the hamlet if it was me, but it might be a typo. But I do have a question, and I did sort of send the email out. This is sort of phase 1 of a bigger picture subdivision plan. And I just wanted to make sure that, you know, like, because the length of these lots sticks out past where an extension of Jenny Lane would be. And I'd like to get some comfort level that the overall plan is laid out, that it will work, and we're not going to do something now that we'll regret later. So I wonder if the planner could, Mom could comment on that.
I had the same question actually, Mohammed, why those lots were so much bigger than the rest.
Yeah, through Madam Chair to Councillor Van Tassen. We actually looked at that during the pre-consultation meeting, and obviously the planners recommend that a comprehensive plan would be better. To start with the 2 lots, but also we looked at the from technical perspective that these 2 lots are fronting Highway 59. It is ready for the drainage along the front of these 2 lots. No issue with the septic system. I mean the private septic system and the wells. The engineering have no issues, so we thought that these 2 lots are ready for construction, and we did not actually review the whole subdivision yet. So as long as it is not submitted, it would be difficult to identify the challenges. But these 2 lots are ready for construction.
Mohammed, I'm going to jump in here. I didn't understand much of that, I got to be honest, and it's not really answering the question. So if we look in a 15-year time horizon, and let's say that entire field becomes filled in that hamlet and a subdivision, Councillor Van Passen's point is that, you know, good planning, you've got your parallel streets. Jenny Lane would run parallel along Highway 59. So why are the lot sizes deeper than Jenny Lane? And even then, arguably, they should only be the width of the front lots, because you can see how the back lots are on the backside. But if you're going to do a double lot, why would Jenny Lane not be the maximum length of the lot? Width, I guess.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we do take those questions, and they were sort of part of the pre-consultation discussion. And as Mohammed had indicated, we did outline the staff preference at that time. I do believe the agent is on the call and perhaps could provide some additional context around the lot size for this particular proposal. But as part of the public hearing, we're presenting their application for the public.
All right, so is the agent, Councillor Van Den Riche, can you hold your question? We'll go to the agent and then we'll come back to staff. Is that okay? Okay. Is the agent on the line? And if you are, you'd have 5 minutes to present.
Okay. I guess I'll put my camera on too. You can see I'm here. Okay, what we have provided to county staff a overall layout for not only these 2 lots, but for the proposed plan of subdivision. We're not actually looking at an extension of Jenny Lane, but actually would be the east-west street that would be, and I believe my client did send Mohammed a copy of the plan quite recently to show the proposed layout of the future subdivision. The lot area is based on the hydrogeological report, and we're required to have a lot this size to accommodate a well and septic system. But
sorry, David, if I can just interrupt, aren't the rest of the properties on a well and septic system that are half the size?
Yeah, all of Langton is, yeah, on well and septic system.
So why do those properties have to be 2.5 times the size of the other ones if they're all on septic?
When the other ones were created, there wasn't the requirement for hydrological reports and that type of thing. And historically, on sandy soils, they allowed lots of 15,000 square feet. In some cases, even as small as 10,000 square feet. That was then, and this is now. So
the geological report, then, if that comes back to council through planning, shows that the lot size needs to be 2 times the size of the current lot sizes in order to put a septic and well system. That's what it's going to say.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind, Langton in particular has a history of high nitrates in the groundwater. And that accounts for much of the size of the lots being larger than what historically have been there.
Okay, I can understand larger, but 2.5 times larger seems
well,
a bit of a stretch. But
that's just progress, isn't it? You know.
Okay, Councillor Vanden Rishi, did you want to go ahead? Oh, sorry, David. Did you have further that you wanted, or was that just
no? Here to answer any questions. So pleased to do.
Vanden Rishi, go ahead.
Thank you. Few news to me, a few things. Anyway, I too was questioning the length of the lot. I thought it would be great in time that Jenny Lane would be expanded. I think you're talking about Priddle Drive going that way and then creating something different. But I too am just, the size of the lot was a curiosity to me, and that was one of the main questions. And I didn't receive anything in my paperwork to show me what was further thought. So I was kind of hoping for that. But I will make just a plain comment that down here in Langton, we are very happy to see development occur. We would love to see as much housing as possible. We need housing, and this is going to help the situation. So, but I am kind of curious on the size of the lot. So that was my question. Thank you.
Further questions from councillors? Councillor Van Passen, I see you reaching. You're on mute there.
Yeah. No further questions, but I've been complaining that we should be looking at expanding our hamlets more so than just always worrying about the large urban areas. So I'd be happy to move the staff recommendation on this one.
Okay, seconder, please. Councillor Vanden Rishi, thank you. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Thank you.
And that's carried. Okay, next staff report CD 2110. 28 TPL 20212223 to approve a draft plan of subdivision 1694467 Ontario Inc. Elder Plans Incorporated affecting 44 First Avenue West, and that's the Keysmat subdivision. And Mohammed, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this site is located in Simcoe area. It's at the western side of Norfolk Street North and at the south side of First Avenue West. As you can see in the slide, the subject land is surrounded by mostly residential and some service commercial zone. There's a trailer storage facility at the north side. The official plan designation is urban residential, and the current zoning is residential type 4 with a holding. This land is permitted for townhouse developments. So the development proposal is basically 2 street townhouse blocks with 9 units in total. Each lot will have a separate lot and individually owned through the subdivision application. We have received several technical reports, including a planning justification report, functional servicing report, traffic impact statement, a stormwater management brief. Yet to receive any technical comments from the agencies, and there is no public input. So for this application, we are reviewing the technical comments and will ask for any revision required. and there will be a reconciliation input further. That's all for this application, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mohammed. Questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, or applicant wish to address the committee?
I would like to hear from it, Your Worship. Mary
Go ahead,
Elder.
Mary.
Okay. Slide presentation I sent to the clerk's office in Mohammed. Unfortunately, if I try to show it, my computer freezes. In fact, right now my computer is frozen. I'm on my phone. So if they can put up the slide presentation, that'd be great.
Therese is nodding there. Just give her a sec.
Yeah. So
Madam
this is
Chair. Can you see the presentation?
We can see the presentation. It's perfect.
Thank you. So it is a draft plan of subdivision application, as was already mentioned by staff, and for 9 lots. All are to be owned separately and all have street frontage. Slide 2, please. The current situation, as staff has already mentioned, is that it is designated urban residential and type 4 R4 in its zoning, so the townhouses are permitted, and we did need some special provisions which were all covered in 14.986 through the zoning bylaw amendment we did previously. So there will be 2 parking spaces on each lot, and our heights is well within the limits of what the zoning bylaw requires. There would be no space for additional the accessory residential units. There just isn't room on this site to do that. With slide 3, we're showing the proposed 3 of the units, what they would look like, and then that would be the same for the other 6-unit building. And slide 4, I just wanted to provide some views across the property so that you could see the building on the left side, which will be removed. The trees are being removed now, and you get to see a little bit of one of the 2-story houses on Norfolk Street North on the other side of the property, just on the right side of it. Then I turn to my right, looking south on East Street, which is the next slide. You can see the warehouse that is there. So it's a little bit further down the street, and it's a couple stories high as well. And with the next slide, I just wanted to show you that as you look north on East Street, you can see the building I had mentioned is going to be torn down, the existing storage building. And then on the west side of East Street, there are single stories, and then the last 2 houses are double stories, which is what this proposal will have height. And my final slide is to show you the Norfolk Street North housing. Because of the 4 lanes of highway and the slopes sides to the street, it seems like it's quite a ways away, but it is quite compatible, this development that's being proposed. So my final slide then is just one more, just to show the 9 lots. And we believe that this is a very compatible, represents good planning, is in public interest. And really this application is just about how to divide the lots for ownership so that we can get on with the development. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Sounds good, Mary. Thank you. I see Councillor Columbus, your hand's up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. My question to Mary is with respect to probably more with the site plan, but down the road, how do you envision garbage waste to be picked up at this particular location?
Each unit would place their garbage at the street like you would for any single detached house.
It would all be placed out in front of each individual unit, so it wouldn't be at one particular spot.
No, because it's not a condominium. Each one is owned separately.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Further questions from the committee? Thanks very much, Mary. Would somebody like to move the staff recommendation? Councillor Columbus, thanks. Or is that your, I don't know if your hand's still up there. Okay, thank you. Councillor Taylor seconded. All those in favor? That is carried. Next is Staff report, CD 21-104, ZNPL 202-1251 to establish temporary use bylaw to permit the use of a garden suite. Gordon Myrna White, 329 Thompson Road West. And Nicole, I think this one's yours.
Yes, it is, Madam Mayor. Just waiting for the presentation to load, I believe, on your.
We've got you there now.
Perfect. Yes, so through you, Madam Mayor, this is a application in regards to a garden suite. So the subject lands currently include a single detached dwelling and 2 existing sheds. The area is predominantly agricultural, with some commercial being located just east of the site, being on Thompson Road West. It is agriculturally designated and zoned. The application posed for these lands would permit a garden suite of approximately 102 square meters in size as a permitted use through a temporary use zoning bylaw amendment for a period of 11 years and up to 20 as per the official plan. You can kind of see the proposed layout in the slide for you. So as outlined in last month's public hearing meeting by Jennifer, garden suites are supported by section 1.4.3 of the PPS and are permitted in the agricultural area through the official plan. Further to that, the official plan does outline specific policies for proposed development. As last month, maximum of 1 garden suite, the maximum of 20 years through the Planning Act, and that there's a satisfaction on behalf of the county that there's a legitimate and justified need. The unit is also designed to be temporary and removed once that legitimate need no longer exists. So given the simplistic nature of the request, the application was only accompanied just by a simple site plan. Staff have received some comments. However, additional comments are expected to be received from our agencies and departments soon. No comments thus far have raised any concerns regarding the application. From the public, staff have not received any comments thus far. So in terms of next steps, the review of all circulated agencies and department comments would be the first, followed by the completion of the report and being brought to council for your review. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions the council or the public may have.
Thanks, Nicole. I see a question from Councillor Huffman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Actually, it's not a question. At the beginning, I think the first slide, I was looking at it and the address is incorrect. I just wanted to, I believe it says Middleton on it, whereas it's actually not. So I just wanted to make sure that everything else was cohesive with the report.
On the second page, was it with the actual, like the picture? Just to confirm.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Yes.
You see where it is?
I see it there.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then I thought that I had read the wrong report. So I was
no,
this is
my apologies.
That's okay. All right. We're all good now.
Further questions? Is the agent or applicant on the line? And if so, if you wish to speak. Okay, doesn't seem like it. If somebody'd like to move the staff recommendation. Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Huffman. All those in favor? That's carried. And next is the last report for the evening, if I'm not mistaken. Staff report CD 21-105, ZNP L 202-11196. Agricultural zone to permit a marine craft repair shop as a permitted home industry use with site-specific provisions. Civic Planning Solutions Incorporated for owner Cole Parker, 3098 Lakeshore Road. And I can't recall who was presenting this one now. I know Teresa sent it to me and I've lost it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's me. I'm going to present it. Just a small disclaimer that this report was rushed through for the public hearing because the staff was leaving from his position, and we recognize that there are some editorial errors and typos which will be fixed in the future reconciliation report. So the site is in Port Run. The subject land is located at the south side of Lake Shore Road and at the west side of Highway 59. Official plan designation is agricultural, and the current zone is also agricultural. The development proposal is for a marine craft repair shop, and the proposal includes that as a home industry, which is permitted in the agricultural land. There are a few special provisions applied for this proposal. A home industry is allowed up to 100 square meter, and they're asking for a special provision for 223 square meter. Another one is it is considered as an accessory structure, which is separate from the primary dwelling, and the permitted accessory structure in the zoning bylaw is 200 square meter. And as I already mentioned, the overall size is 223 meters, so a little bit higher than what is required. We received technical reports, including planning justification report, functional servicing report. We have received the drawings and traffic impact study. We are yet to receive some of the agency's comments, but there are some comments we received, including the zoning, which says that there is a rear yard setback, which is 3 meter provided, whereas the requirement is 10 meters. So we'll include that special provision in the amendment also. No public input has been provided yet, and our next step would be to collect all the technical comments and asking for any required revisions, and then we move forward for another reconciliation report. That's all from this application, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? Okay, I think the applicant or the agent is on the line. Mr. Rowe?
Yes, I am. This is basically a application zoning amendment for home-based business. It's actually fairly straightforward. The proponent has bought the house on the property, and what he wishes to do is build a shop behind the house and continue. He does boat repairs. The site itself is quite conveniently located towards the causeway to go out to Long Point. We've been at this, I think, about 1.5 years. We've done a traffic impact report, functional servicing, and planning justification. He's not envisioning actually having any employees, basically just doing the work himself. The site plan will show where outside storage, and there really won't be that much outside storage. The idea is the boat comes in, work gets done on it, boat is finished, another boat comes in for repair, and the one that's been repaired gets sent out. So really very small size business, something that is needed, and it's in a location. I don't think you could get a better location than adjacent to the causeway going out to Long Point, where there's obviously lots of boats. As I said to several people, it's probably the most studied home occupation application I've ever seen. But needless to say, we're finally, hopefully, at the end of the road, and that Mr. Parker will be able to proceed, get his building permit, and be able to continue his business. So. Presently, he's located up in Walsingham Center, and this actually puts them into an area where a little more visibility and again, close to where all the boats are. So that's kind of my 2 cents worth.
So I see a couple of hands up, Councillor Huffman and Councillor Van Passen. Just a quick question first, like what was the rationale for a functional servicing report for a marine repair shop? Like what is the water draw on a marine repair shop?
Well, I think the rationale is that it's on the checklist of things to ask for, albeit in a condition where I believe there's municipal water, but a on-site septic system. The proponent lives in the house there. He's not hiring anybody else. However, that was what was required for a complete application. And there's Norfolk really doesn't have a system where someone is in charge overall to say, well, you know, that's really not necessary. The same with the traffic impact study. I've got a speed line to a traffic consultant out of London, and you know, Norfolk needs another one-page traffic report. So bang, we get one done. But no, there really needs to be a better process to decide when a study is needed, when it isn't, and put a little bit of reasonableness in the process. I find it sometimes difficult trying to explain to a client, in this case, why do we need a servicing impact report when you're
well, it reminds me, I think you had the other file for the storage unit with the functional servicing report for, you know, at a storage unit facility. It's comparable. Brandon, any comments on that? Like, how are we going to get this stuff fixed? So it's not a 1.5-year application for a home-based business with, you know, this was a lot of us ran on red tape and excessive government bureaucracy 3 years ago, but 3 years later, we're still doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think through the chair at this point in time and for this particular meeting, my suggestion is that we could identify that staff are undertaking a process review right now, and we can report back on further updates. We're well aware of the comments and some of the instances, and we are working and gathering information from the development industry and from staff. There's also certain technical requirements, but there are other approaches that we are working on and looking at, and it's currently under a process review right now. And so I think that's maybe the best to leave it at that for now instead of getting into a back and forth.
I guess I've kind of said this to you before, but as you know, I think it's important for planning staff to hear. You know, I think council has your back if you can justify the decision that you made, and you said you, as an example, didn't require the applicant to submit a functional servicing report because they only had, you know, one toilet for their couple of employees. I think as long as you can provide something to back that up in the future, if there's an issue, there's no reason why council wouldn't have your back and support that. But that's always been, you know, one of the pieces that almost every person here ran on, is that there are so many things within the Planning Act that, much like to Councillor Martin, to Marian Gadsby's point earlier with the Port Dover secondary plan, the distinction with the use of the wording shall, will, must, you know, there's a lot of actual flexibility within the provincial legislation that doesn't demand that all of these studies be required in every single instance. And I think what this council has wanted as one of our top goals, besides sort of restoring financial stability and hopefully water, was, you know, to create an environment that, you know, encourages these types of businesses for people to, you know, to come here and to be entrepreneurs and to make it easier. And I think there's a very big distinction between somebody that's building a home-based business or a small-scale entrepreneur of any kind, whether it's at their home or not, and somebody that's building, you know, a Walmart or a supercenter or, you know, a major housing development. I think that we have to very clearly separate those two levels of developers. And for the little guy, it's all these studies make it so prohibitive that it's just not cost effective to build a business in Norfolk County, and so they go somewhere else. So hopefully that is something that we really can start to address in the next few months' time. Councillor Van Passen, go ahead. Sorry, Brandon, I didn't mean to cut you off there. If you had something else you want to add.
Nope, I was just going to say thanks. I know we've had some discussions, and if that's some of the direction from council, I think we're well aware of that. It's on our own plans. It's on our own work plan. It's in our economic recovery plan, even about improving.
We've been saying it for a long time now,
streamline.
I'm still waiting for the change. But I know you guys are hearing it, so hopefully, hopefully we'll start to see that in the coming months. Councillor Van Passen, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. You just saved me about a 5-minute rant. So, but I do have a question for the applicant's agent. Because it's a home industry, it requires a 10-meter setback. This property is not in a subdivision. It's not in a hamlet. It butts up against an agricultural field. Will you be moving the building when you go for the building permit, or will you be amending the application? Because I would fully support a 3-meter separation from the property line for this type of building. But which way will you be going?
Is to seek relief on the setback and go to the 3 meters. It's it backs onto a field, and there's no likelihood of anybody being there, quite frankly.
And it just makes sense to line up with the driveway and all that. So I expect, or hope to see that come back that way with an amendment. So thank you.
It will. It certainly will.
Councillor Columbus, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to add on to your comments to staff. There's hardly a week goes by that I don't receive a call from a development applicant. And all it's doing with these types of requests is just delaying the project and increasing the cost. So let's hope that staff can rectify that so that we can get some smoother, streamlined development process.
I'll go one step further, Councillor Columbus. It's not just delaying the project and increasing the cost for an individual. It's actually reducing the tax income to the county, because for every day that the project isn't built is less revenue than you're actually bringing in here. And further, by imposing these additional onerous requirements that need checking and rechecking by different staff members, it's delaying other projects and having those same chain reactions come along as well. So,
yeah, the only thing that maybe add, what I find is it tends to drive some of these businesses underground. So they say, why bother applying? All this hassle. I'm going to just open up, take my chances. And in Norfolk's case, bylaw enforcement is on a complaint basis. So I drive by businesses I know that have been illegal for 15 years. They continue to operate. They're not properly zoned. And then we get an applicant like this, and he's going through all the hoops and doing everything he's supposed to, and you can just go down the road, and this guy, well, he's running a trucking terminal, and he didn't bother, and nobody's complained, so he gets away with it. That's one of the frustrating parts. We throw the book at the guy being honest, and the guy that isn't honest, he just gets away with it, and that really is frustrating.
Thanks, David, for your comments.
Anyway, so thanks.
Thanks very much. Okay, does somebody wish to move the staff recommendation? I think he's done it all. Councillor Van Passen, thanks. Councillor Taylor, seconded. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So I think that is the last then we have, unless I don't see the clerk nodding at me or anything. With that, then, if I could have a motion to adjourn, please, from council. Councillor Van Den Rishi and Councillor Taylor, thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. Have a great night, everyone, and we will see you next week.